Have you ever had a day where you technically didn't do that much, but you feel like you ran a marathon? Like your brain has 47 tabs open and none of them will close? That's what we're going to talk about today. Hey friend, grab your coffee, your water, whatever you've got. Today we're naming something that so many moms carry every single day, and we've normalized it so hard that we start thinking it's a personality trait. It's not. Today's episode is called The Invisible Load Has a Name. And the big idea is this: you're not failing, your system is overloaded. This is Amanda Armstrong, and let's get into it. So today's topic is a bit controversial, but it is something that especially Gen X women have been talking about for a while now. And a lot of people are not necessarily getting on board with the topic or really understanding the topic as a whole. So what I'm talking about is when you're overloaded long enough that it starts to feel like you are the problem. Like you're the one who's disorganized, you're too emotional, you're too forgetful, too sensitive, too controlling, whatever. You nag too much. All of the vocabulary, that negative vocabulary that comes with when a mom or a woman kind of messes something up, when she accidentally burns the bread at dinner. But what if you're not any of those things? What if you're just the one who's been running the entire family operating system and you're burned out, you're overloaded, it's too much, and your brain is just finished? This is a term that is being used. It's called default parent. When you're the default parent, you're not just doing the task. You're the person who notices what needs to happen, decides when it should happen, remember it's happening, or maybe even make sure it actually happened. And the last one, making sure it actually happened, that's where so much of the exhaustion lies. That's where we get super tripped up. So researchers call this the mental load. And one of the clearest descriptions I've seen is that it's not just cognitive labor, like planning and tracking. It's also emotional labor. And it's often invisible, it's boundaryless, and enduring. It's invisible because a lot of it is happening in your head. It's boundaryless because it doesn't stay in a neat little box. It follows you into work, into your downtime, into your sleep. And it's enduring because care isn't a project you finish. It's a constant cycle. Let me tell you what happened to me yesterday, because this is the invisible load in real time. We have a regular appointment for my oldest that he logs in on Zoom. It was scheduled for 1:30, and I made that appointment way back in October. It's part of a routine schedule. And yesterday, around 1:20, I go up to my kiddo and I'm like, hey, you got 10 minutes until your appointment. And he looks at me and goes, oh, I already had it at 11. Dad wanted to join, so it got moved. And I'm just standing there like, wait, what? What happened? Somewhere along the way, my husband changed the appointment time to 11 so he could join it. And I'm not mad that he wanted to join. That's great. But here's the thing. I had no idea the appointment time changed. And I'm the one who's home with the kiddo who's kind of running the show and making sure he's on task and doing what needs to be done. And we have a shared calendar. My husband has access to it. I'm the one who maintains it. I'm the one who actually uses it as the source of truth. And when I checked, the appointment time was not updated there. And so what happened? I did what default parents do. I held the original plan in my mind, I tracked it, I reminded my kid, and I tried to execute it. Meanwhile, the entire plan had changed, and the system that I had in place didn't update. This is the part that's so hard to explain to people who aren't carrying it, because someone might say, well, it's just one appointment. But it's not just this one appointment. It's the fact that your brain is the project management tool. And when someone changes the project plan without updating the tool, your brain is what takes the hit. And this is exactly what research on perspective memory demands helps name. There's actually a name to this. Perspective memory is basically remembering to remember. It's remembering to do something in the future. And parents, especially moms, carry a huge amount of this. And research finds that mothers report greater perspective memory demands than fathers, especially for tasks that benefit the kids. When I read that, I was like, oh, yeah, that's the thing. That's what drives me crazy. Because it's not just remembering the appointment, it's remembering the login, the time, the device, the quiet space, the paperwork, and then the follow-up, and then the next appointment, and then refilling the meds, and the school form, and the snack for the day. It's a constant don't let the ball drop feeling, right? We have all these balls in the air, but we can't let any of them drop. This is where I want to bring in a framework that makes mom feel a little bit less crazy. A researcher, Daminger, breaks cognitive household labor into 4 separate parts. So there's anticipation, which is where you see what's coming, identification, which is noticing what needs to be done, the decision making, choosing what to do and how, and then monitoring, which is, of course, making sure it all gets done. A lot of families try to solve the problem by redistributing the physical tasks. Kind of the idea of you make dinner and I'll clean up one night, and then you clean up one night and I'll make dinner. But if one person is still doing the anticipation and the monitoring, the load doesn't actually shift. That's why just tell me what to do can feel like a whole nother job, because now you're managing a person in addition to managing the task. I have another story for you. Last December, like 2024, I created a 28-day home contribution rotation schedule. 4 kids, 2 adults. I went in full teacher mode, executive functions, the entire just chore list get done around the house. So I built the Excel, I printed it for each kid, and I asked them to put their assigned contributions into our shared calendar. And for a while it worked. It was really helpful. They would put in on this Tuesday of the 28-day cycle, I'm in charge of taking the trash cans to the curb. And then they would repeat that activity 28 days later. So it was an automated system that was just a checklist that organized everything that was going to happen. As you can imagine, a lot of the chores did not get put in correctly. Contributions, we call them contributions, not chores. A lot of them didn't get put in correctly in the first place. For most of January and February of 2025, I was adjusting all of that, making sure that everybody's stuff was where it was supposed to be and it was rotating properly. And for a while, it really worked. Like March was pretty nice. But then what happened is what always happens when the system depends on one person to keep it alive. I spent a lot of time adjusting what they put into the calendar, and then eventually everyone just stopped using it. In September, I said, fine, nobody's going to use this electronic shared calendar. I made a laminated checklist. Very teacher thing to do. Then each morning I would go and I would circle which things were assigned to which kid, who was in charge of what. This system existed, but the burden stayed on my shoulders. Even though I had tried to automate the system into a shared calendar, and then I tried to automate it with a physical list, I was still managing it and distributing it and making sure that it was happening correctly and properly. And this is what researchers mean when they're talking about a boundaryless and enduring issue. This system existed, but the burden stayed on my shoulders. Because the work isn't just make the chart, it's notice it's not being followed, reminding people that it exists, troubleshooting why it's not working, adjusting it, reteaching it, monitoring it again, and then repeating the cycle over and over again. And somehow you're the one who feels like you failed when it fizzled. I was super frustrated by the time I got to September and October because what I had worked so hard on 9 months before had failed. So it was my fault. The system didn't work. I have to adjust the system again. I took the burden of the failure of the system on to me solely. But I didn't fail. I built a system and a family culture that still defaults to me as the manager. And so the system didn't do what it was supposed to do, but that was mostly because the other members of the family unit weren't living up to their end of the bargain. And I still had to monitor everything. So it doesn't actually take everything off of my plate. I have another story about physical space, and this happened this week as well. I've organized and reorganized our pantry like 1,000 times. There's 4 kids. That's a lot of food. 4 boys, aged 10 to 16. You can imagine how much food we go through in a day, and much less a week, trying to make sure that I have the weekly food requirements for all the kids and everybody in the house, making sure that I have the actual physical space for it has been problematic. The amount of food that is required in our house is pretty extensive. I have the main pantry area, and then I have a backstock area. Shout out to the Home Edit girls for backstock. Part of the weekly contribution plan was that each kid would refill the pantry from the backstock in the laundry room once a month. Every Saturday or Sunday, one of the kids had a rotation where they were supposed to refill mostly their snacks, the stuff that they would be eating on the go before practice or throwing it into their lunchbox, whatever. This morning, I went in and noticed that every single bin for their take to school lunch items was completely empty. So I went through the backstock, replenished everything, and then I realized that I was out of quite a bit of the things that they would use on a daily basis. Then I had to go to the grocery store this afternoon because the backstock was empty in places. The worst part about it is that there's a whiteboard where everyone can add grocery items. So whoever job it was this weekend to refill the pantry just didn't do it. I'm the one who's kind of paying the consequences for that by additional labor and additional time. As you can imagine, the grocery list, the whiteboard for the shopping list is completely empty, so nobody's put anything on it. This isn't about whether people can help. They're capable of doing these items. It's about whether the system is designed so that the person who notices the problem isn't always the same person who has to solve it. That's where a lot of the issues come in with moms and with women. That's anticipation and that's monitoring again. So I want to zoom out for a second because this is just not a home issue. It spills into everything. The Women in the Workplace research that just came out this week notes women are less likely than men to want a promotion. 80% of women want a promotion versus 86% of men who say they want a promotion. And it links that gap to career support and personal obligations. And almost 25% of entry and senior level women who don't want a promotion say personal obligations make it hard, compared to 15% of men. If you're carrying the invisible load at home, more responsibility at work doesn't feel like growth. It feels like collapse. And then there's the bigger context. Even when families want to share care responsibly, the structural support is super limited. The U.S. Department of Labor overview of FMLA says eligible workers can take up to 12 work weeks of unpaid job protected leave for certain family and medical reasons, but eligibility depends on work history and employer size. So a lot of families are trying to solve ongoing care needs with a very little margin. What helps without adding more to your plate? How do you resolve this default parent situation? One strategy is to name the role. Try saying something like, I'm not just doing tasks, I'm managing the system. Really take a bigger lens as to what's actually happening. Naming it in a different way will help maybe you and your family realize that it's more than just a task that needs to get completed, that managing the system is a whole other job. And then shift from help to ownership. And this is why I use the word contribution at home instead of chore. And I never say to anybody, will you help me make dinner? I definitely say, will you contribute to making dinner? Because they're going to eat that dinner. It's not just me. I don't need help. I need contribution. Ownership means from start to finish, planning to follow through, and reframing the system, parts of the system, through help to ownership and shifting that idea can really help kind of lay things out and take that mental burden off of you. Another thing that you can try is to externalize the remembering. One, share a calendar. Now, even though our share calendar has its flaws and sometimes it doesn't work and not everybody uses it, it still is really helpful so that I really only have to pay attention 24 hours in advance. So I don't have everything in my brain. It's all on the calendar. Get used to saying, check the calendar, check the shared calendar over and over again when people ask you questions, because then you can start kind of training them to use that as their source rather than you actually physically answering question. There's one shared list, one place for school info. There's not more apps. It's just fewer open loops. So you're controlling the movement of information. And make the invisible visible in a weekly reset. For 10 minutes on Sunday evening, talk about what's coming up, who owns what decisions are pending, who's going to take care of what part of the system tomorrow, this week, whatever. If you want a super simple way to get the mental load out of your head and into something you can actually work with, you can go over to our website and grab the executive function checklist. There's a link in the description, and it's designed to help you spot those open loops that you're carrying and make a plan that's realistic without the shame spiral. Because when you spread the responsibility across everyone in the family, then that also eliminates you taking all of the negative consequences of something not working upon yourself. Go grab that executive function checklist and look through it and read through it, and then request a meeting with the fam and just kind of sit there and talk through it and say, how can we integrate this into our daily lives? If this episode felt like someone narrated your life, I want you to hear this clearly. You're not failing. You're carrying a job that was never meant to be invisible. And naming it is not complaining. Naming it is the first step to changing it. So make sure to tune in next week for more insights on this topic. I'll talk to you soon.